What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Greetings again, Buffer Timers. Here we are to talk about the 5th episode of Strange New Worlds this season, Charades. Let's go around and introduce ourselves right quick. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm Scott of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
I am Vanessa, and I run a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
Howdy, Robbie Sherman. I run Conversations with Robbie Sherman, been an audio editor on Let's Chat with Chris Revel. Thank you for having me, everybody.
All right. So this was kind of a weird episode. We get to see the many sides of Spock that we've never really seen before. Pretty interesting. Let's kick right into what did we think about T'Pring and the whole storyline that has gone back to Amok time.
I thought she played it pretty well. You know, you have Vulcans who aren't supposed to show emotion, but she was clearly frustrated the whole time about dealing with her mother with very good reason. And her added frustration, like at the end, when she's telling Spock, like, I accept you the way you are, and you should be able to talk to me, your fiance, about these things. The person who you've swapped bodies with. All that was really well done, I thought.
Yeah, I think T'Pring throughout the whole episode is pretty good, but they've also been casting her like emotionally as distraught away from Spock, not connected with Spock throughout this series so far. So I feel like casting her aside by the end of the episode is a pretty easy thing for them to do on a narrative level.
Yeah.
I think meeting her parents has filled out a ton of context about who this person is and what motivates them, what kind of relationship she has with her mother, and the fact that the very end, her speech to Spock before they take their "it's a break." I've been okay with your human side until he actually started acting like a human and explained why he was deceitful about this to her in addition to everybody else, even the human mistake to make in the moment, motivated by an emotion.
So specifically in that last interaction, how do we feel about the fact that she uses the term, "Did you ever consider my feelings?" Because that's really weird coming from a Vulcan to me.
It's a really fair point.
They explain throughout the episode that Vulcans do, in fact, experience feelings. They just feel them much stronger, and they have to overcompensate in order to repress them. So it makes perfect sense that she would refer to her feelings. It's usually not something that you would factor in a Vulcan interaction, but they also express their feelings very passive aggressively through. Oh, yeah. So they're definitely there. They're just characterized differently.
As a character trait in Vulcanism, like, they're so intent throughout the different series of showing Vulcans as suppressing their emotions. It does feel funny in its phrasing to say, did you not consider my feelings? The person who is not supposed to be expressing emotion of any kind because it leads us to terrible places.
Right.
It seems to me like Vulcans have a very intense interpersonal relationship. For as cold and calculated and distant as they are to even their own family members, their partnerships with their life partner is a very intense and intimate one.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of see it in like TOS. I can really see the love between Sarek and Amanda, and all they do is touch tips.
It's like middle school with them. You're just touching tips.
Yeah.
Just put the tip.
Also, like when I don't know if this is a feature throughout canon, but when Vulcans are bonded they're like psychically bonded. They're like physically connected, not just like emotionally and sentimentally, but something happens to one of them, it affects the other. So, you know, it's really intense. So it actually, like in certain contexts, it actually does make sense to bring up feelings, but it was unusual for her because Vulcans don't usually express themselves that way, basically.
This did a better job of explaining to me how Vulcan relationships actually work than almost any other Star Trek example I've come across in the entire time I've been going through it. Like, I feel like I understand like how Vulcans have personal relationships now. Like, I feel like I understand them better as an emotional species. It makes a lot more sense now to me as a species, because like they're like through the different series, you get examples where you're told that they don't have emotions, or they're suppressing emotions, or that when they do have emotions, they're not very powerful. But you know, having it to be to where their emotions are so powerful that they constantly, as a whole society, have to suppress them, and then like their interpersonal relationships are a way for them to release those emotions and have a connection with someone outside of themselves. What are you putting on there? Okay.
Oh, I had thrown up the cam bot finally.
Oh, right.
My name too.
That whole thing where like she shows up and Spock's trying to go through the whole, you know, ritual thing, and Spring's like, no. I've been dealing with my mother. I can't deal with this right now. Let's just go.
Yeah,
felt relatable.
So that was gonna be the next question I kind of got to, that for this like super orthodox Vulcan family, both the dad and T'Pring seem to be very animate.
Yep.
Particularly her dad, which is surprising, being married to we'll just call her Ultimate Space Karen.
I mean, like compared to like Martok and his wife, you know, they like to juxtapose this. It's a little bit of a sexist trope, the sort of battle axe wife that's satisfied by nothing, that is completely against a marriage, and the husband that's, you know, sort of laid back and affable and you know, liked the food and that kind of thing. So it's like
I will
there's
never,
a lot of
I will never. It's okay. I just want to say I will never forgive T'Pring's mother for putting down Pike's loving feast that he made for them. He worked really hard to concoct this thing. He even took in the dynamics of room spacing and like room temperature, like to try to make it a little better and make it last longer. And they're just upset because it's not the traditional way. You're on a spaceship. You're not doing this in the traditional way at all. Who cares?
Yeah, like you pointed out with Martok's wife here, and it brought up the tone of T'Pring's voice and just the way she said when she first stepped off the transporter pad, "You seem different." It's the same way Martok's wife greeted him. "You've grown fat." And just, I saw a lot of similarities between the Vulcan and the Klingon rituals for marriage. I find that astounding. I don't feel like it's very logical that they do these things the way that they do. For the Klingons, it makes sense, but I don't quite get it for Vulcans.
I mean, the battle in Amok Time, I mean, there's pieces of Vulcan culture that sort of account for this irrational piece of themselves. And so they sort of codify it within these little rituals. And Klingons sort of do the same thing, where each of the trials that they put themselves through, it's like knowledge-based, endurance-based, pain-based kind of things. And it's like, these are ways to gatekeep unions. So, and I think Jadzia's case was a bit different because she is not a Klingon. She was a Klingon weeaboo who openly sort of talked smack to, Worf's new mother. Whereas with this is a Vulcan woman invalidating the identity of somebody because he is of mixed heritage.
They could have called this episode "Guess Who's Coming to Dinner." It's so on the nose about its racial politics at times.
Yeah, I said that in Chekhov's voice from
okay.
Star Trek 6 when I watched this.
Yes.
So you are absolutely right.
Dinner. Oy.
So can we go on to like Spock having his little emotional breakdown? Like, how did we feel about the various moments of Spock's human emotions overtaking him through the day?
I don't know what it was. I don't know if it seemed like it was a little bit overdone. I cringed just a little bit.
Oh no!
I get that he's really experiencing emotions for the first time, and he's like laughing just too hard and too long at Ortegas's joke. That was a bit much. Or no, I was gonna say the bacon thing, but I get the bacon thing. I'd eat bacon like that.
Yeah, I mean you got to catch up for a lifetime of not eating bacon.
Yeah,
that's a must.
Yeah, I mean, you're from a vegan planet, you know, you don't get any bacon there, let me tell you.
I loved the what the fuck moment and then cut to black and cut to opening credits.
The cold open was so tightly done. It was so well paced. This entire episode's pacing was there was not a line or action wasted. Everything was pushing the story forward. And I enjoyed that a lot. And with these scenes where he's experiencing and expressing emotions for the first time, as somebody who, sometimes learns emotional expressions by mirroring, this is what this looked like. Like, I can finally experience this thing sincerely. And this is how I'm going to express it in a way that I perceive it. So when he's like laughing, this is his impression of other people too. That's what I got from it.
The moment through the emotional like outburst that got me, it was when he is flipping the fuck out about Kirk's like sandwich droppings on the table. Like, that was like, so it was funny. I was kind of cringing a little bit, but it was also like, man, that was funny. Like, to watch Spock have this full-on meltdown over a few cookie crumbs.
They sort of foreshadowed it before, where Spock at one point just brushes the crumbs off.
Yeah.
And then this is the first time that he's experienced a sort of persistent annoyance without a stopping mechanism or a choke mechanism to make him sort of like, collect himself. So he's, of course, going to lose it. I
love everybody else too. Just like, are you serious, man? Like,
right?
You upset about this?
Back because of this? That whole scene, those two scenes were actually kind of a minor annoyance to me, because I've been waiting for Sam to show up again since the beginning of the season, but he's only here to serve Spock's story.
Yeah. I wrote a whole script to do my initial thoughts video, and due to technical issues, I just kind of gave up this week. But one of my dislikes was not for this episode, but for having Sam Kirk here. And if you could only get the actor for like 2 scenes or something, I get it. But they needed to be in tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. He needed to needed one scene there.
I'm actually,
but he's funny as hell in this. I agree with that. I love the little like pick up your mess joke.
I'm fine with him not being around all the time, because I think there's a compulsion to kind of get the gang back together in the way the original Star Trek is. I think it would be bad for the show if we kept doing that too much. Like, it's nice that Kirk just kind of shows up and he has.
Here's the thing, though. Like I said, I've been rewatching TOS, and I couldn't help notice, like, you talk about, keeping the gang together, but like, the first season didn't have Chekhov at all.
Right.
I've been working my way through season 2. There is a serious lack of Sulu on that bridge.
Yeah, he was filming. It was one of those famous war movies, and he was off for most of season 2.
Oh, you mean The Graduate?
He was in The Graduate.
I don't remember. I thought
I'm messing with you. That's not a war movie.
Yeah, I was like, what?
I have to write this out really fast.
Yeah, like Chekhov was sort of brought on to be like the cute young,
He was the monkey of the gang.
Exactly. That yes, that
Literally.
haircut. Yes. And there was like some episodes where he's fully wearing a wig and it's
Yep.
bad.
Yeah. The first 2 times you see him, he's wearing a wig because it hadn't fully grown out, and it's wow. I don't know where they got that.
I never understood why he's like the monkey sit-in for that show when he's never playing music or being like a musical dreamboat ever. Like, just go full on with that if you're going to do it like Gene Roddenberry in the 60s. That's horseshit. Giving me this little guy to just sit there and speak Russian. Anyways, we're not talking about
before we completely get off the idea of Spock and the oddities that we get to see of him, what do we think about this goddamn Starfleet beam?
Oh man, he was drinking some
Can I
hot
get that
dog flavored water here, let me tell you.
I thought that this looked very TAS to me.
Okay.
And I'm into it. I am so into it.
It is kind of classic though, because I mean, it does look a lot like the many hats Spock would wear on various planets to cover his ears in TOS.
Oh yeah, like in City on the Edge.
Uh-huh. And
That
I think nope, not that one. I was gonna say a piece of the action, but that's all wrong.
Yeah, that's a big hat, big fedora.
This little touch felt so new metal to me that it almost kind of took me out, because I was like, man, why did they pick that hat of all the things? He could have worn just like a regular baseball cap or something, just something that didn't feel like such a highlight of a specific period of time.
Well,
He did it all for the Nookie.
Yeah, I was trying not to make the joke, but
So using that, let's segue into some other pieces of the wardrobe that we saw. Let's start with Amanda and her her Beebs dress, we'll call it.
I love how y'all were like, "Oh yeah."
I didn't say that. I just thought that maybe there were some choices. I mean, Mia Kirshner, icon, if there ever was one. Gorgeous, like, icon, if there ever was one. But when I saw it and I found out who she was, I was just like, man, somebody must have been watching The Crow back in 1999 and thought, we got to make this woman Spock's mom, let me tell you.
Yeah, she didn't really like dress like that in Disco, right?
Oh, she's in Discovery too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Few episodes. But there's a lot of really good examples from my point of view as a plain simple tailor of just wonderful wardrobe. And this whole season, like, oh my god, if there's not an Emmy win, I'm gonna be bothered.
I'm really glad we've gotten past the awkwarding costume phase of Star Trek, because if you look at like the first season of Next Generation, the costumes feel so stiff and like just uncomfortable to look at all the time. They always feel real nerdy in a way that doesn't seem professional. And now the costuming on this show is so svelte and it looks so sharp. It's great. It's so good.
And so I've always called this version, the tunic version of the Starfleet uniform, the casual. So is this the formal version of the casual?
Does kind of have a bathrobe-y sort of vibe to it.
A little bit.
I hope they don't start putting him into this when he like gains weight like they did Kirk back in the old series. You know?
That's his drinking uniform.
Did you just say 20 times older?
And 20 times handsomer.
Yeah.
I see.
And
I don't know if it's just hard to tell because of what we've seen before, but was his hair especially high this episode?
No, I thought it like flattened back out because the last one it
average
got all weird, it got all windswept.
He got more of a duckbill in that one, let me tell you.
He's got such a canvas upon which to paint his character for that episode. So however high his hair is amazing. I really enjoyed his dress uniform as well. I feel like it's simple and tasteful and almost smoke jacket-y.
Oh yeah.
And, I don't know about like Amanda's dress for the engagement thing. I guess that's just how she likes to dress. Like I don't know if I would want to wear that to my kids' thing, but whatever. Like
What
Special
about
effects.
T'Pring's thing here?
That was an interesting design, actually.
I love this.
Her
It
outfits.
was cool that they brought attention to, like, she hates it.
Mm.
Oh
It
man,
looks very structured. All her outfits are very like structured around the shoulders, similar to like the lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
And
Mhm.
The
has a
pants
sort
thing.
of Southeast Asian or South Asian vibe to it, harkening maybe to the actress's actual background.
T'Pring always feels very aggressive in her costuming choices. Like she has these super sharp shoulders all the time, and it always feels like a choice to me. Like her character has to be defensive all the time.
That's fair. It's kind of a reflection of self in that, yeah.
She just looks very constricted to a very repeatable silhouette, but it works.
Mhm.
It works
Yeah.
for her.
Oh yeah,
And then meanwhile, Pike is more relaxed and confident. He's got that like dress tunic that you're saying looks like a smoking jacket. He's just going to sit there with his snifter of brandy and start knocking him
That's
back when
another-
Pearl starts
like-
talking.
Is everybody drinking real alcohol? That was a thing on TOS too, right? Everybody was just drinking.
Oh,
Well, in a lot of shows in the '60s, like the cast of Bewitched was smashed all the time. The way I understand it.
if I was on Bewitched,
no,
would
I
be
can really
too.
do magic. Watch.
I mean, if I got the opportunity to be Paul Lind on Bewitched in the '60s, you bet your ass I would have been drunk off. Oh my god.
Okay.
Did anybody else think that the B plot with the Kirkovians, which I mean, obviously fucking Kirk, great. Did
Right.
anybody think that plot was a little thin? That it was a little, there wasn't enough to it. Like, oh great, yellow and blue, and you're both blue, and you just like, it
They
just
call
kind of
themselves
happened,
colors.
and then Chapel just shows up with a hypo full of MacGuffin at the end, just at the right time, and I liked Chapel's whole interaction with them about Spock and coming out. Like that was great. But everything else about them for me, it was a little too thin and inconvenient, or too convenient.
As a-
Okay.
Like non-corporeal aliens can serve as a bit of a plot convenience, especially when they're sentient. They can sort of do anything, say anything, be capable of whatever. Just
As a plot device. Hi, Tay. I can't pronounce
That's
the rest of
Tanya.
it.
Hi.
Tanya. Okay, Tanya. As as a full on plot device, it kind of takes the bottom out from Nurse Chapel's story, because we don't really see her do much with this alien species. And then when she calls up the Vulcan that she had to do the interview with, she doesn't really have anything to give him other than, I talked to an alien species that had never been found before. Haha. And she just turns off the screen.
to be fair, that fellowship seemed kind of crappy.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if this
Yeah,
guy
that
was running it, forget it. Like no.
Oh man.
Yeah,
you
that was
never hear the
barely
end of
mentioned.
it.
What, like at the, what was it, in the beginning? Yeah, the first episode, and then just kind of coasting in the background until now, and then it says, "Oh no, you're not doing that." No, I know, I'm not doing that. Nice Corby reference, though.
But you could also tell that another reason she said no to that fellowship was because of her feelings for Spock too.
Yeah,
That her priorities were a little, shifted very quickly. And as far as this alien, I really dug the interior here. It was again very TAS. Like they're sort of like doing the things that TOS didn't have the budget or the effects for, and TAS did, but it was only drawing. So I really loved this, and I loved that it was these three heading the mission: Chapel, Okura, and Ortegas.
They did a really
Yeah.
good job on the backgrounds in TAS.
Oh, yeah.
Like I always thought those looked fantastic. If only they could have made it move just a little better.
Yeah, the backgrounds were probably the best part of that show, honestly. Is this season the most that a captain has been a background character?
Oh, I didn't
I
think
mean,
about
like,
that. Maybe.
Oh, this season
Pike
in total,
only
yes, I
really
would say.
did anything in the last episode, and otherwise he's just kind of been there.
I mean, I guess maybe in DS9 you have a lot more subplot type shows where you don't have the actual captain involved, but he's still a pretty big part of DS9. Like he's still a major plot point throughout DS9. Pike does feel like he takes a lot of backseats to the stories that are being told with his crew.
Yeah, but when you have like shorter seasons like this, they're only 10 episodes long. The absence of the captain is way more noticeable.
Yeah,
especially when you get, like tomorrow, and he's just barely there except for like one scene.
That could also be a reason why he's not in the forefront, because there are only 10 episodes and there's other people's stories that need to be highlighted. A lot of real estate was given to his fate, his relationship, his story, and his emotional approach to captaining with whatever time he has left. So, I don't really mind that he's a bit decentered, but it is noticeable for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also a thing to where, like, you have such a diverse cast, too. Do we really need to have another show all about an aggressive white guy all the time?
That's the thing.
This is fair.
It'd probably have more interesting layers than what Pike has to, offer a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, technically, we still haven't seen the real Kirk yet, so.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we saw him for a second anyway on Lon's pad.
Yeah.
But, yeah. We haven't explored the real Kirk.
The thing that pisses me off about New Kirk the most is that goddamn mustache. I just want to shave that thing off. I hate that little muskrat on his lip. I hate it.
So here's a comparison question. Do you think that T'Pring's mom or Kai Wynn is the ultimate space Karen?
Well, I think Kai Wynn has a much higher body count if we're going by like, if that's how we're measuring evil here. Like Kai Wynn has the institutional power to enact violence that doesn't involve her directly. Whereas this person, whose name I don't remember.
Pearl?
T'Pring.
I don't think like April, except, they have.
Got it. Yeah, T'Pring is just directly, doesn't even have give people the decency of the passive aggression to sort of like put on airs of being polite without being polite. No, she's just openly racist and horrible. And Kai Wynn doesn't even have to do that. She can just say, yes, my child, and then get someone to kill them or something.
Right. I think I just saw a meme today. It was talking about Kai Wynn, talking about the time she, walked into a school being taught by a person of color, accused of being woke, and tried to shut it down. It's like, yeah, that about covers it.
Yeah.
I wish we did have a bone stand-in of some kind on this show so those two could have hashed it out for like a good 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Way off topic. Does anybody else want to see this cage match that's never really going to happen between Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk? Because I would pay for that shit.
I'm not giving them
I think
any
that's
dollars.
what they expect.
Yes, that's exactly what they expect.
I mean, they even like mentioned measuring body parts or something, and it's like, just get it over with.
I don't want that.
Give the people what they want. I mean, we don't really want it, but just get it over with.
I think it's going to go over like that Sylvester Stallone, what the hell's his name? I'm so bad at names right now. But anyways, they did that grudge match where it was like Rocky versus the what's his name? God, I just forget about this point. I'm losing my mind today.
I would just think like one of them's gonna get like slapped and then it's over. I don't really see them like going to the mat like it's a cage fight or anything. I don't really see them having that sort of emotional and physical endurance to withstand pain for any amount of time whatsoever. Both of them look like they're made of clay. It's just
They're just two lizard people, you know? They'll be equally matched in strength. Like, it won't matter. It'll just suck. It'll be a play.
Yes. Okay, back to topic. Does the perceived breaking of canon here with T'Pring or any other thing that you want to call out bother you?
Nah. I don't
Kinda.
care. Okay.
Totally
that's fine.
fine. Totally fine having an adult relationship with each other as adults and getting approval from other adults as adults. like it's a little draconian and ridiculous, this sort of hoop jumping that they have to do, but I'm better with this than canon.
Bring on the retcon.
I really don't care about that crap because I care more about storytelling and character resolution more than any of that junk. Like, oh my God. Like, some of the stuff from TOS, it's so dated now. Why do we have to keep it like that? We can move things around and have a little fun with things. Like,
I agree.
Yeah, although it does seem kind of, they've been setting this up as what happened before TOS. So
Would you say that about the Bible, Robbie? No, I'm just-
yes,
Ooh.
I would.
Shots
Fuck the
fired.
Bible. Just because people get paid to like tell fairy tales doesn't mean religions get a tax-free incentive for it. Okay, that's horse crap.
That over there. This guy knows.
Agreed.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, retcon everything. It doesn't matter.
Jesus was a Capricorn, like Chris
No, I
Christopherson
got into
said.
it with somebody on some Star Trek Facebook thing this morning. They're like, well, you just get writers that can write better and that can write with the canon. And I'm like, and they're like, it's easy. I'm like, really? There's 800 episodes plus 13 movies to consider. And if you really want to like stick the landing, you use as much beta canon as you can too.
I mean, they can
Try and
pull it
keep
off,
up with
though.
that. It's almost impossible to completely. I mean, here, yes. Do I think that they could do a better job if they wanted? Maybe.
Mhm.
Do I think that it might have led to a less interesting story? Yes. I hate Amok Time. I am not here for it. I have never liked it. Kirk and Spock getting down in the sand and messing around with weapons. Okay, that was fun. But otherwise, it's an episode where 2/3 of it is spent changing course between two planets, and it's
That's
not
true.
that interesting.
And you don't learn anything about how Vulcans actually come together in interpersonal relationships.
Right.
That's
And we
a
watched
We learn
Spock-
more in this episode.
We also watched Spock go through puberty in a very short amount of time, which is very awkward. And he smashes his computer, which gave me very Gamer Bro vibes, you know?
Was
And he kind of does the same thing here.
was Spock
Yeah.
getting stiff around Ortega? Like, there's that scene where he explains that he has like feelings he's never felt before, and now he feels embarrassed, and he's just
Yeah.
sitting there with his hands over his crotch. It felt like a signal they were giving, you
I
know?
missed that part, but you're probably right.
Yeah, she just kind of like taps his shoulder and is like, you just gotta work on impulse control, sweetie. And then she just walks away. Like that's definitely the acting of a woman who is uncomfortable.
Like,
Oh my God.
It's clear that part of what makes it so cringe and awkward is that whatever emotion he's feeling, he speaks to it, because he doesn't know that like not speaking to every emotion or narrating your inner world is a little awkward for those around you. So he's being honest, which is like, this is one thing you can lie about. You can lie about, get a clipboard, get a trapper keeper, and just say nothing.
Yeah.
I want to see Spock carry around like a Lisa Frank trapper cube.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even
Covered
have
in
to
stickers.
He didn't even have to say. He didn't even have to say that, and she could have like walked out of the room and been like, "Spock, are you coming?" And he's just sitting there with his trapper keeper over his pants. I'll be there in a moment. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
She'll go in a moment.
Did anybody else think that the whole thing where the crew had to like reteach him to be Vulcan was weird. Like, I
Yes.
get losing control of your emotions and having to deal with some new shit, but you have to be retaught Vulcan etiquette. That seemed weird.
I don't think it was etiquette. I think he lost the ability with all these emotions and the inability to manage them, the sort of visage of repression that Vulcans put on all the time, because he's suddenly able to express his emotions through his face, and it's not, which is extremely hard. If you see someone holding a laugh, you know that's what they're doing. So it's nigh impossible to just go completely blank on purpose.
There was
Yeah.
moments. Go ahead, Scott, please.
Yeah, but I also see the problem with it. You're trying to teach a Vulcan. You've got non-Vulcans trying to teach a Vulcan how to act like a Vulcan, and then in the middle of that, at the same time, there's this Vulcan ritual that needs to be observed that Spock is learning from his human mother. Because I don't even remember why Spock and Sarek are estranged at this point. Was that just because it was the way it was set up in TOS? Or
I think it's because of what happened in Disco. It's not said, but at the same time, Sarek and Amanda come and visit them in the very last episode before Michael goes to the future. So yeah, what happened? I took it as that when T'Pril said that about, like, oh, well, your father, it doesn't even see you anymore, so clearly there's no respect there. And
You know what it was?
What?
He shaved the beard and Sarek couldn't take it.
I think it's just a matter of resources, because there's no other Vulcans besides Spock on board, and the only other Vulcan that would be able to help him is not available, which is convenient here because all he has to go off of are other people's impressions of what Vulcans are. So it is a game of telephone in terms of like cultural communication. Like, this is my impression of you, that you are, this. And it comes across that way. There is an uncanny valley, Vulcan uncanny valley, where it's not quite what it's supposed to be. And I think that's actually really smart.
I do think it's one step away from being a 90s style. You ever notice how Vulcans be like this? Like, if you weren't writing it right, it would come
in every trailer, every time I watch the episode, or every time I was watching another episode, and when I watched it during this one, still funny.
Alyssa Wong down here has a comment. Amanda went through the ceremony herself and had been regulating human emotions in front of judgmental Vulcans her whole adult life, and she just rocks as a mom. Amen, Alyssa.
Really does.
Yeah. And it
I
was a good
bring that up next. Yeah. Anyway, that's probably my favorite scene. Is like Amanda is more Vulcan than Spock in this episode, and I am so here for it. I've always loved Amanda, and this brought her to the forefront more than any other episode. Like, we got to learn more about her as a person and a character, and she nailed it.
Amanda as a character throughout Star Trek history is so cut off from like really good emotional cathartic moments a lot of the time. Like, I remember thinking when I would see her throughout different series, it's just like, I don't know who this person is. I don't know why she is so interested in Sarek and why she decided to have a life on Vulcan, when she's so thoroughly displaced by it. And this episode gave me so much character for her. It was so satisfying.
I always like the explanation in this beta canon story I read. They were just talking about how Sarek realized when he first met Amanda that he had to keep her around just so they could keep arguing, because he enjoyed their arguments. I like that like their relationship could blossom from that.
What were you wanting to say, Vanessa?
Oh, I was going to say, with Amanda, and what I loved about this episode is that through being able to receive and perceive other people's emotions too, because you could also see that he noticed that Chapel was upset about something, he could finally connect with Amanda on a purely human level and understand what she went through on Vulcan, choosing to be with Sarek, and what she sacrificed. Because there's that scene where she like grabs the pot and says, you know, I've just learned to endure pain. And it's like, wow, that it just scalding hot pot as a metaphor for, you know, your life with your husband is pretty difficult. And raising Spock, having to raise somebody on Vulcan who's, you know, marked with a red letter H, essentially, like the challenges that come with that, to be marginalized your entire adult life must be incredibly painful.
Doubly so, because, you know, you've got the half Vulcan kid and the human kid.
And there's never any shred of evidence that suggests that she treated Spock differently from the other kid too. And I always think that's really good. Like they never show anything like that at all. It's so good.
That just makes me wonder, do you think we'll come back to Cybok either this season or at all in Strange New Worlds?
Oh, if they introduced him and don't bring him back, there's going to be hell to pay. People were geeking out over that so much last season.
That he's got a, you know, they friend. And,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and I was so into it. It's just so bonkers and weird, and they need to bring it back just for the fun of it too. But it seemed as if from the premiere that the big bad is going to be the Gorn again. At least that's why they didn't really like bring the hammer down on Spock for stealing the Enterprise.
Yeah, I honestly had kind of forgotten about the Gorn, despite we've seen the trailer where they're showing up somewhere on a planet, on a colony somewhere, and we saw the bit in the first episode, but I thought we were going to like come back around and keep touching on that a little bit as the season went on, and we haven't, which is kind of weird, but okay.
I wasn't here for the 4-episode retrospective you did last week. I apologize for that. I had to deal with some other issues, everybody. But I really enjoyed the first episode of the season and thought it got us off to a great start as far as what we might be expecting in villainy and also what we might be expecting in character dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it set Spock up right at the beginning, like he was dealing with some emotional regulation issues, and then got his loot, and now here we're really dealing with the emotional regulation issues.
I wonder.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
I was going to say, I wonder what Amanda's experience with this ritual was like for her.
Oh.
Being a full human. Did she have to go through this too?
Like, how does it feel to mind meld with her husband like that for the first time, and then, you know, not have any frame of reference for how that would feel beforehand ever? Like, as humans, I don't think there's really anything human beings do that give you the same sense that a mind meld will.
Sure. And we're out of regular questions, so if anybody has any questions or talking points you'd like to get to before we rank this?
I think Anson Mount's comedic timing when Spock took off his fake ears and he's like got the tray of crudité or whatever it is, the Vulcan food, he just like walks past. I laughed so hard.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like the comedic timing in this episode was just so sharp.
True.
And I just really enjoyed that, you know, Spock is with somebody that doesn't, towards the end, he's with somebody that doesn't like, not accept any of him. It's not an unfortunate happenstance that he's half human. I just love the message of acceptance here. And I love that they've retconned this thing where it's like, he comes out as, you know, human during that day and stands by that identity and defends his mother, because like for their entire lives, like that didn't really happen.
Anson Mount is such a choice pick for this show because
Oh, gosh,
he's not only a great leading man, he's a great supporting actor in all the ways that matter. He lifts everyone else around him up, and then he's still able to make these little moments that seem slight at first viewing have much more impact than they normally would.
Agreed.
I wanted to point out the moment where Spock got in the elevator and he like didn't say hi to anybody and was just like so focused on doing his daily routine. And Chapel thinks that he's ignoring her or whatever, but he's really just he kind of is ignoring her on a level because he isn't dealing with those emotions that he's had for so long. But I used to do that stuff in high school because I've probably always been a little cut off from other people's emotions. So I would like end up seeing friends or something, but I'm just too busy like thinking about what I got to do and then just walk past them without even saying anything, didn't even think about it.
Also, he's was engaged, and like speaking to those emotions would open the door for something else possibly. So it's like, yeah, he may be concealing it because he's trying to remain faithful to his fiance, because like monogamy in Vulcan culture is like very important, you know. So
they're breeders. Let me tell you, those Vulcans.
So I could see him like trying to remain professional but distant because their friendship has gone into an awkward area. So
right. You know, I'd say if anything, I've been thinking about this for shout outs to like every time they cast Spock, because I don't know how they managed to keep getting it exactly right. I was thinking like TOS, I don't think anyone but Nimoy could have played Spock, and like for a while, like Martin Landau was considered for the role. You know, when the reboot came on, I literally cannot imagine anyone else but Zachary Quinto telling the Vulcan Science Academy to live long and prosper when he clearly meant fuck off. And Ethan Peck is just nailing it as this new version of Spock. I love it.
Hey, if Martin Landau had been cast as Spock, then he wouldn't have gone on to the far greater in influence Space 2000.
Yeah.
Or maybe talk about original castings. Imagine if we'd had Gregory Hunter as Pike and not recast as Kirk, who didn't even live as long as TOS. He drank himself to death.
Wow.
I wonder if he'd gotten the job, if maybe he wouldn't have, or if it would have happened sooner. You know?
It would have been wild if in Star Trek history, the first series has the captain die like mid-series and you have to like figure out a new type of funeral procession for a captain like in the middle of the original series. And then they bring in a new captain for like half the run.
You know, I always assumed that when they started Picard, that whole thing about like the Irumodic syndrome flaring up was just an insurance policy in case an 80-year-old Patrick Stewart died during filming.
You were wrong, sir. That was a plot device.
Wrong. It was a plot device that went nowhere. Hooray.
Aren't you glad you were wrong, Dustin?
No, actually. I'm glad that Patrick Stewart's still with us. Sir Patrick.
Oh, yeah.
We love you, sir.
He should have died.
It was contractually obligated that Paramount killed Patrick Stewart at the end of season 3 of Picard.
And then by the end, we find out there's still his human body and his robot body, and it gets really confusing.
Yeah, and they can keep using him for future Star Trek series in his robot body.
I also really enjoy scenes when the crew is doing something other than be on the bridge, when they're in the bar and they're hanging out and they're, you know, coaching each other and bonding as like more of a group of friends than, because like if this isn't just like any old workplace where you punch in, punch out and go home, you're like on the ship all the time. So I dug it that they have a deeper relationship.
Speaking of which, when are we going to give Spock his own little musical concert the way they do Bortus on the Orville? They give that guy so much time.
Why would you say that? Because you know that's very likely we're going to get a musical this season. And
I want to watch him playing his little dulcimer. It'll be cool.
I want to watch Spock and Una
Great.
do the rest of Gilbert and Sullivan type stuff. Short of that, no, I don't want to
Just
see Star Trek the musical. I want to go on Star Trek the cruise. I do not want Star Trek the musical.
How about Star Trek the racquetball experience? Would that be fun for you?
I think I could get down on that. I think I could live with that.
I don't know how to put up Dell's comment, but that's terrifying. That is terrifying. I mean, like it's kind of the premise of Picard season 3, is it not? They sort of like store people to use them in perpetuity.
Yeah, before
Yeah.
Dell even brought that up, I was going to ask the final question as, do you think with all the talk about, oh, well, forget actors, we can just scan people and do stuff, which, I mean, we all know can only go so far, but if we could use it to legitimately preserve people that are alive now, pay them for their likeness before they die, and use them going forward, is that okay?
No.
No.
No. I don't want to watch like AI Star Trek where there's just people with like 6 fingers and stuff.
Not quite.
They kind of did it with Harrison Ford, right? In the new Indiana Jones, where they sort of like superimposed his like likeness from back in the day onto his like new moving or whatever.
Is that what they did? Did they de-age
Yeah.
him? I have no idea. I have not followed it.
Instead of like de-aging him, they sort of like used old footage and stuck it on there.
Okay.
I just only if their family is getting residuals and if everybody's comfortable with it. But like I feel like it sets a disturbing precedent, because then you could put any words and any action on that person. That could like posthumously damage someone's character, which is terrifying,
We've been seeing foreshadowing of this in different Hollywood productions for a number of years. There's a major boat, so terrifying for me to think about when I saw it back then. That's been probably 5 years or 6 years at this point. And it's even more of a reality than we've ever been closer to than ever before.
All right. Let's rank this thing out of 10. I'm going to give it an 8.5. I had a good laugh at times. I felt that even through the thin B plot, the bit with Chapel like pouring herself out about what she likes about Spock, loved that, and I loved exploring more of Amanda's character. Oh, and Pike just being like the background, witty, charming, amazing Pike. I'm here. 8.5.
Well, I'm going to go off on a rant, so buckle up. I'm giving this episode a 5, and I will tell you why.
5?
Yeah.
God.
I was watching a review of this episode last night that made a lot of really good points. The first and most important being that there aren't any real stakes here. They talk about how this is kind of a retcon of canon, but a big plot point from last season was Pike realizing that no matter what, he's going to end up in the beat chair where we saw him in TOS. So clearly they're following the same timeline, which means there was never really any worry that Spock was going to be permanently human. And we may not have known at what point he was going to break up with T'Pring, but we knew that was going to happen too. So a lot of this kind of didn't matter. And then they wrap it up in what is essentially a sitcom plot with a sci-fi twist. Oh, this crazy, wacky thing happens to Spock right before something important. Hijinks ensue. And one thing nobody's pointed out, that's an exact repeat of the midpoint of last season, because Spock Amok and this episode are both episode 5. It's really like Spock Amok with another twist. I don't know if it's just because it came right after what we were kind of hoping would be, an Ortegas episode and give her more backstory, and then she didn't get any. But that whole thing really brought it down for me. Saved by the performances and a few funny moments, but the underlying structure is just what took it out for me. So yeah, 5.
Okay, well, those are very valid points, Scott. I hadn't even considered that at all. So that makes me want to adjust my grade down by about 1 degree. I'm going to give this a 7.5. I was going to give it an 8.5 because I was truly entertained throughout the whole episode. And I kind of like having these Star Trek episodes that are much more character focused, that we're not doing big space battles all the time. Picard season 3 has really worn me out on the Star Trek space battle because
That's
it's
fair.
like this stuff is getting dumb. Like we need to calm down on that and actually give our characters genuine payoffs and emotional arcs. I thought everything was really funny as well as emotionally rewarding by the end of the episode. I loved Pike's comedic timing. That was fantastic. I love the chemistry between Chapel and Spock the whole episode. It just feels so real. Like those actors work together in ways actors who don't have chemistry can't.
Yeah.
How do you feel, Vanessa?
I think this is the best episode that they've put out so far. Personally, for me, I give it about a 9 because pacing, bam, all this, the story just like hit. We knew exactly what this, there were stakes, and this isn't an isolated incident where Star Trek creates stakes that are going to be wrapped up in an episode. That's a pretty common thing. So I was fine with that. But more than that, if you take a step back, what it seems to be about is Spock's identity. Who are you underneath like this visage of, are you this buttoned up Vulcan? Are you this uninhibited emotional person who loves bacon? Like, who are you in general? And whether he was going to say yes to a life where he was constantly going to be policed about his behavior. Like this ritual wasn't going to be the end of their contentious relationship. It was going to be thing after thing after thing that this woman's dissatisfied with. Like, of course she's going to hate something that is made for this, no matter how much detail is attended to, because she can't be satisfied with it. So I feel like this pivot was, it's such a strange thing that like Spock's relationship with T'Pring is a centerpiece in Strange New Worlds. Like I didn't expect that, but I'm into it. I like that. I feel like this is one of the more well-developed pieces of Strange New Worlds, and I'm really excited to see where this goes next.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that gives us an average of 7.7 with Dell's 8.5. Yeah, I agree with Vanessa. It's the best episode, at least this season. The last episode of last season might still be a little bit better for me, but not by much. They're in that same kind of ballpark. But I can understand Scott's frustrations too. It's got some problems, but I'm willing to overlook a lot of them because it's just so damn much fun of an episode to watch. And sometimes that overrides all the little canon pieces and things that could have been better, but it keeps it from being a 10 for sure. But yeah, I'm in that 8.5, 9 range, and we're all queuing up around a 7.7. So that's pretty good. That might be the best thing we've given as a group in a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll probably be back next week. Anybody remember the name of the episode on Thursday? I don't remember the next one.
I can't keep these things in my head.
I know we're not at those old scientists yet.
No, I used to have a
That's
list.
a
Now I
couple more.
don't.
Anyway, I'm sure it'll be interesting. And if not, we'll be here to tear it apart sometime in the next week or so. Thanks to all my co-hosts for getting up, and especially Vanessa out there on the West Coast and doing this with us. Thank you for all for tuning in. And we will be back sometime on the soon. Until then, live long and